You've probably asked it at some point. I know I have. Why are we here? What is the whole point of all of this? It's a huge question, one that can feel pretty daunting. But what if the answer isn't something you find? What if it's something you build? Let's dive into that.
Okay, let's start with a really heavy quote. It's from the philosopher Albert Camus, and he did not pull his punches. He basically argued that before we ask any other question, we have to answer this one. Faced with the absurdity of existence, why not just end it? It's a jarring place to start, for sure, but for Camus, it was the only honest one.
But hold on, this isn't about despair. It's actually the exact opposite. Because for Camus, the conscious decision to keep living, even when you know the universe doesn't care, is the ultimate act of rebellion. It's in that choice that we find our real freedom. So this isn't a story about hopelessness. It's a guide to creating meaning where there is none.
Okay, so how do we do it? How do we find meaning in a world that feels meaningless? Well, according to Camus, it starts with confronting something he called the absurd. And no, he doesn't mean something is just silly. He means a fundamental conflict at the heart of our entire experience. Think of it like this. You're an actor pushed onto a stage, but you have no script, none. You're desperately looking for your lines, for your motivation, for the point of the play, but the director is nowhere to be found, and the theater is empty. That feeling of disconnect, that's the absurd. It's the clash between our deep human need for answers and a universe that just gives us silence.
So, you've got us on one side, right? Humans. We crave order, we want things to make sense, we need clarity. And then on the other side, you've got, well, the universe. And what does it offer us? Chaos, indifference, mystery. That huge gap between what we want and what we get, that's the absurd condition.
All right, so if we're stuck in this cosmic standoff, what are we supposed to do? Camus doesn't give us an easy way out. Instead, he gives us a hero. A really surprising hero, actually, the mythical figure of Sisyphus.
So, the story goes that Sisyphus really ticked off the gods, and for his punishment, they gave him this eternally pointless, soul-crushing job. He has to push this giant boulder up a mountain, but every single time he gets near the top, it rolls all the way back down, forever. A task with absolutely no purpose and no end.
Now, Camus looked at this cycle and saw a perfect metaphor for our own lives. You've got the struggle uphill, right? Then that moment of failure at the top. But then comes the most important part. Something remarkable happens on the way down.
See, the real action isn't the pushing, it's the walk back down the mountain. That's the moment when he's totally, completely conscious of his ridiculous fate. And in that moment, he has a choice. He can despair or he can rebel. He can own it. And by choosing to embrace the struggle itself, he becomes stronger than his rock. He becomes the master of his own fate.
And this leads to Camus' most famous and kind of mind-blowing conclusion. He says, the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Happy, not in spite of his meaningless task, but because of it. It's about finding fulfillment in the journey, not the destination.
Okay, so that's some pretty heavy philosophy. It was revolutionary stuff for its time. But how does it stack up today? In our modern scientific world? How does this idea of creating our own meaning fit with what we know about the cosmos?
I mean, science basically tells us we're the result of cosmic accidents on a speck of dust in an unimaginably vast and totally indifferent universe. So, if there's no grand plan, no cosmic purpose handed down to us, then what are we even doing here?
Let's break it down. You ask the universe, why are we here? The universe just kind of shrugs. What's her purpose? Silence. What happens when we die? Nothing. But that's just the cosmic answer. The human answer? That's where it gets interesting. We can say we exist because of chance. We create our own purpose, and our consciousness ends, and that's okay.
And you know what? A silent universe from this perspective isn't a tragedy at all. It's freedom. It means the script isn't pre-written. It's a blank page, and we get to be the authors. We have the absolute freedom to define what matters to us. Okay, so if we're all a bit like Sisyphus pushing our own boulders, what are these boulders exactly? Like in real everyday life, where do people actually find this meaning? Let's switch gears from philosophy to social science and see what the data tells us.
So, a 2024 study published in PubMed Central actually asked this question. Researchers surveyed over 470 people to figure out which social factors really make for a meaningful life, and the results are fascinating.
So here are the key takeaways. First, having a high-quality romantic relationship, that's a big source of meaning. Having kids, also a huge positive link. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, the strength of these connections is different for men and women.
All right, let's look at parenthood first. The data here is super clear. People with one or more children report significantly higher levels of meaning in their lives compared to those without kids. It seems that for a lot of people, the daily grind, the challenges, the joys of raising a family, that's a really powerful boulder to push.
Now, what about our partners? The study found that a great relationship boosts meaning for both men and women, but the effect is way stronger for men. So what's going on there?
Well, the study offers a pretty compelling theory. It seems to come down to our support networks. Women, generally speaking, tend to have these broader networks of friends and family they can lean on. Men, on the other hand, often rely more heavily on their romantic partner as their main source of emotional support. So, for guys, the quality of that one relationship can have a massive impact on their whole sense of purpose.
So what does this all tell us? It tells us that the search for meaning isn't something you do alone in a dark room thinking deep thoughts. It's not a solitary quest. It's something that's totally tangled up in our connections with other people.
And this brings us right back to Sisyphus, doesn't it? That struggle Camus talked about? It's not some abstract idea. It's the real, messy, everyday work of being a good partner, raising a family, being there for your friends. That's the stuff that fills our hearts. That's where we find our meaning.
So your rock could be anything. It could be your family, your career, your art, your community. It's whatever you choose to pour yourself into, day in and day out. Not because you're going to win in the end, but because the act of pushing, the struggle itself, that's the point. That's what gives it all meaning. So I'll leave you with this. What's your rock?